Welcome to the Workforce Resources for Libraries video series. This is brought to you by Project Compass, a partnership of WebJunction and the State Library of North Carolina, and made possible by a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is the fourth in a series of short presentations by Pat Wagner, educator, trainer, writer, and consultant with Pattern Research. Pat has worked for and with libraries of all kinds, plus library boards, foundations, friends groups, and national, state, and regional library organizations. We are very fortunate to have Pat's expertise today.
Thank you very much. Now, when we talk about helping job hunters, one of the things that we want to be careful about is that the library itself is not promoting people who are going to prey on the job hunters. So one thing we should review are some of the job hunting scams that are out there. It's important to me because I sometimes walk into libraries where with the best of intentions, there's brochures and posters up for groups and projects who I know are crooks. And I know that it's going to hurt the people you're trying to help. So let's take a look at some of the things that you need to know to do a better job for your job hunters. We're going to talk about how people are preyed upon, what are some of the classic scams and some of the characteristics of people who are trying to take money from people who are job hunting, specifically some of the internet scams to pay attention to, and also honest resources that you usually can trust to do the right thing by the people you're trying to help. So when we talk about people who are preying on the unemployed, why are unemployed people and job hunters such easy targets? Well, the first thing is that when you're desperate, you kind of lose your logic about things. You're focused on how am I going to pay the mortgage or rent? How am I going to feed the kids? How am I going to pay for my car? And so if somebody offers you a good deal, you want to believe that it's true. You don't want to put on your critical thinking hat because if you did, the disappointment might be too much to bear. People who are job hunters aren't necessarily sophisticated about what the kind of scams are. This may be their first or second time job hunting, so they believe that people are honest and true. If you're a good person, you think other people are good people as well. It's kind of nice when someone comes up to you and says, oh my goodness, look at this resume. It's a wonderful resume. I know that there's a great job out there for you, and if you pay me $300 or $500 or $1,000, I'll make sure it's yours. Who doesn't want to be flattered and made to feel that they're special? Sometimes you're feeling pressure, or the job hunters are feeling pressure from the folks back home, sitting at a barbecue or a family party, and somebody says, well, hey, Joe, hey, Mary, why don't you have a job yet? So you're also feeling that pressure to meet the expectations of your family. And the people who prey on the unemployed know that even if they are caught, they're going to get away because the folks who are ripped off don't like to report it because it's too embarrassing to say, oh, yes, I'm a degreed professional or I'm an experienced employee and I've been around the block a few years, or I'm a 50-year-old person and they got me. So most of the time, these kinds of crimes are underreported. Makes it harder for the district attorney's office. Now, sometimes a person isn't really a crook, but the incompetency of the project they're working on is going to mean that they're going to fail. So even if we're not talking about someone who's actually a criminal, we got to watch out. What are some of the signs that this is something you want to stay away from? Well, first of all, they have all these really interesting, obscure, fantastic international connections with blind trusts and banks, and it always goes like, well, I know this bank that fronts an Iranian-Swiss double-blind trust, and they only need $3,000 as goodwill money, and it'll go into the bank and out of the bank, and everything will be fine. Well, the person who tells you the story might actually think it's true, but in the big scheme of things, this is another unicorn, something we all can draw, but doesn't really exist. What about the documents they give you? If it's very complicated, if there's a scheme involved about stuff and you have to run through a couple of steps extra, please stay away. A good rule of thumb is you never sign a document that you don't understand. And if you take it to your banker or your lawyer as trained professionals and they don't understand it, stay far away. The person who's coming to you really doesn't have real references. They can't give you the names of specific people they've worked with who are known to you because they work for real companies. They can't offer you real evidence of any experience they have about stuff. And they can't point you to people locally. They've just come into town and they don't have a local banking or insurance or legal representative who can say, oh yeah, I've known them 20 years and they're straight shooters about stuff. Job hunters can't afford to chase people who are newbies. Let somebody else learn their lesson on their dime, but not on your client's dimes. Another thing we want to look at are some of the classic scams. And what's interesting is a lot of the kinds of crooked projects that have been taking people's money for decades, maybe out of little newspaper ads or notes on bulletin boards, are here in the 21st century, and they're being aimed at job hunters. The work-from-home ads are mostly illegitimate, and you don't have the time to figure out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. The secret list one. Here's a secret list of people with a lot of money. Here's a secret list that if you only pay me $500, it will give you insider information about jobs that aren't going to be posted anyplace else. Anybody who asks you upfront for money is someone you want to stay very, very far away from, because I don't know of any legitimate agencies who charge the job hunter up front. There sometimes are companies that will take a percentage of, your first 3 months' pay after a successful connection, but not before. If they tell you they're going to guarantee you a job if you take their particular set of classes or training program, that also is a big, big flag. Even law firms have been tagged recently by legal organizations saying you can't just go out and promise people that if you graduate from this particular law firm, you're automatically going to get a job. All those jobs that sort of put you in a van and send you around the country selling soap or selling things door to door are ones to be avoided. Anything that requires you to go to a class. And, I've seen these the most for people who want to be stars and want to go to Hollywood and want a career in music or in modeling or in acting or something like that. And there are a lot of companies out there that purport to be agencies that are going to help you get a job in the field, but really what they are schools. And you pay a lot up front for something that's going to guarantee nothing. And finally, it's the issue of the headhunter. Headhunters need to place people who make at least 6 figures in order to pay their own fees. So somebody who says that they're a headhunter and they're trying to find you a job where it's only going to pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, I would be very suspect that they really can help you. Now, this is the 21st century, so of course there's going to be internet scams as well. One scam that has come up since the crash of the economy is setting up emails that send you to phony sites where they ask you for things like your federal ID number, social security number, bank account numbers, mother's maiden name, all the kind of information they need in order to raid your accounts. So any kind of site that asks you for that kind of information you should avoid. There's vague mention of important contacts. They'll talk about Fortune 500 companies. Well, if you look at the sites of people who really do business, who really have the connections, they will boast about the specific companies they've worked for, and they'll provide you with very specific references. I say that if somebody says that they worked for IBM or worked for AT&T or worked for Apple, you want to know when they did it, and you want the specifics so you can check it out. Now, our little company uses a post office box, a postal post office box, kind of to protect the privacy of our own business because we work out of the home. However, if you want to meet us, we can meet at our home, we can meet at places. We're not like a vapor organization. What I find interesting is if you can't find very much about this organization listed online, there's no current references, so there's no one to call up. And when I say call up, not just somebody at a payphone in a bar, a legitimate organization that has a track record. There's no phone number at all to call up. I'm very suspicious of organizations that don't allow you to talk to a human being. And the idea that the employer's name is a state secret, Those all are flags that tell you that maybe it's not something that you should steer your job hunter to, no matter how desperate they are. Okay, so who are you going to trust? Who are the places that you really can go to? State and federal agencies obviously are at the top of the list as far as offering counseling services, job listings, and so on. And we have to remember that they often get the employers who really, really need people. The jobs may not be as desirable to some folks, but they are a way to get your toe in the door and get a paycheck again. High school and college counseling programs often have very solid practical information, and you don't have to worry that you're going to pay $1,000 and not see them the next day. I also encourage people to look at trade and professional associations and unions for information about jobs in the area, qualifications, technical services, evaluating educational programs as well. Now, there's some other places that are good to go to, but I want you to be a little careful. One thing is religious groups, and not because religious groups are going to rip you off, but there are people who like to rip people off by going to a religious group and saying, well, I too am a member of your denominations, therefore I am trustworthy. And I know at least 2 cases where crooks approached churches and were able to take that church for a lot of money simply because everyone trusted them. So always trust, but always check out the facts as well. The same is true with established nonprofit organizations, that sometimes they offer services in terms of credit checks and cleaning up your credit and so on. You just want to see how they're doing currently and if they have the resources to really help people. Just because they had a great reputation 5 years ago might not mean they're doing as good job today, simply because they're overwhelmed by all the needs people have. And finally, licensed professionals. There are a whole bunch of people out there who are clinical psychologists, counselors of different kinds, who are licensed by their state and there to help you. The reason you want to look for people who are licensed, it's a way of tracking them and finding out if they've had any complaints registered against them, and they have oversight for what they do. A lot of people in the career field don't have oversight, and you got to be careful to make sure that they do have an established reputation. What if things go wrong? Who are you going to call? Well, first of all, you have to count on yourself. The best force to keep you safe is yourself. And so you, as a library professional, and the people who you're helping have to do your homework and do your research and take nothing at face value. If somebody shows up and says, oh, yes, I can do wonderful work helping people, ask for 5 references. If somebody who's in the field of helping job hunters can't give you 5 current local references, let them earn their experience on someone else's dime. If you suspect there's a problem, start with the Better Business Bureau, because they're one group that is likely to have heard complaints about these folks before. Don't hesitate to call local city attorneys or law enforcement people, because the white crime divisions are eager to hear information about folks because they know patterns. When I had my research business, I would call them up on occasion and always found them most helpful. And they'd say, oh, my goodness, is that woman back in town? She was here 3 years ago ripping off people. Thanks for the heads up. We know exactly who she is and what she looks like. And particularly in smaller states, let your state's attorney general know, so they can also track not only what's happening in their state or state to state. Now, the last thing I want to say is that nobody's perfect. Even the best service can make mistakes. There can be misunderstandings. We encourage people always to get written contracts, or at least to have things written down, so it's less likely that there'll be misunderstandings. So if you are looking into someone's track record and there's some complaints, I'm not going to be too worried about that. But if there's a consistent pattern of people saying they took my money and I didn't get what I wanted, that should be a heads up. So in a way, what you're going to be doing for your job hunters is being their first line of defense by making sure that your library doesn't unintentionally bring people in or support services that can hurt the people you're trying to serve. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Pat, for that very valuable information. If you're interested in more resources to help you and your library staff meet the needs of job seekers, we are building a very robust community of practice on WebJunction, and invite you to visit the Workforce Resources section on the site. If you want more information about Project Compass, please visit the Project Compass section of the site to learn more about what we've been doing through this IMLS grant-funded effort that's been going on since fall of 2009. Thank you for joining us for this series.